AITA for refusing to give my younger brother a loan for a wedding he planned without considering my financial situation. So this is going to be a bit long because there's a lot of backstory, but I want to lay everything out so you can judge fairly. I, 34M, have a younger brother, Mark, 28M. Growing up, we had a pretty normal sibling relationship. Occasional fights, usual rivalry, but nothing too extreme. Over the last few years, we drifted apart a bit because I got married and moved out of our hometown, whereas he stayed close to my parents. A couple of months ago, Mark called me to tell me he got engaged. I was genuinely happy for him. The problem started when he mentioned that he wanted to have a pretty big wedding in a city about 3 hours away from our hometown. He's been with his fiancée for about a year, and they both come from families that are not extremely wealthy, but they've managed to get by. Here's where it gets complicated. Mark asked me for a loan of $10,000 to cover part of the wedding costs. To put that in context, I'm doing fine financially, but $10,000 is not a small amount for me either. I'm not rolling in money. I have a mortgage, 2 kids, and other expenses. I told him that honestly, I didn't think I could lend that much, but I could help in other ways like helping to organize, giving advice, or helping find vendors at a lower cost. Mark didn't take it well. He said he didn't expect me to be stingy, and that family should help each other in times like this. I explained that while I care about him, I can't just hand over $10,000. It's a big risk, and I would have to put myself in a tight spot to make it happen. He called me selfish, and the conversation ended with him hanging up. After that, things got more tense. Our parents sided with him, saying I should consider helping since it's my brother's wedding, and that family support is more important than money. My parents even offered to cover part of the amount themselves if I contributed, but I told them I couldn't. They were disappointed, but didn't pressure me beyond that. What really escalated the situation was that a few weeks later, Mark started posting on social media about his wedding planning, including things like wishing my brother would step up, and some family members prioritize money over love. He tagged me in one of these posts, which I found incredibly passive-aggressive. I messaged him privately, asking him to stop publicly shaming me, and he replied that I was being too sensitive and that he has a right to be honest about how my family treats me. I decided to maintain my boundaries. I offered to help with smaller things, helping choose decorations, sending a gift, being part of the rehearsal dinner, but I refused to lend money. This has caused a huge rift. My parents are upset. My fiancée is frustrated because she feels I'm being pressured into something I'm not comfortable with, and Mark has started ignoring calls and messages. Now, a few friends and coworkers are starting to weigh in. Some think I should just lend the money to avoid family drama, while others agree that my financial situation is not something I should jeopardize for a wedding. I've tried explaining that it's not about money. It's about responsibility and boundaries. I also think it's weird that Mark planned such an expensive wedding without considering his actual budget or asking his parents to help first. The last thing that happened was Mark sending a long text saying, "I guess our relationship means less to you than money. Good luck explaining that to your kids when they need you someday." This really hurt because I do love my brother and want to have a good relationship with him. I feel like he's twisting things to make me look bad. So now I'm in this position where our family gatherings are going to be tense, and I don't want to give in, but I'm also worried about permanently damaging my relationship with Mark. I know I'm within my rights to say no, but I can't help but feel guilty for not helping him financially. I'm sticking to my decision for now, but I keep second-guessing myself, especially because of all the pressure from family and social media. AITA for refusing to give my brother $10,000 for his wedding, even though I love him and want to support him in other ways. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give my sister's husband a significant portion of my inheritance after he claimed he earned it. I, 32F, recently received a substantial inheritance from my late grandmother. She was incredibly close to me, and in her will, she left me the bulk of her estate. There were some smaller amounts, and personal items for my cousins and other family members, but I was the main beneficiary. My sister, 34F, and her husband, Dan, 35M, have known about this for a few months, but things only escalated after the reading of the will. Dan immediately started making comments about how he helped raise me and supported my sister through difficult times, implying that he deserved some of the inheritance. To give some background, I moved in with my sister and Dan for about 6 months when I was 18 after falling out with my parents. During that time, Dan worked full-time while I had a part-time job and went to community college. I never asked him for money, and he never explicitly offered to pay my tuition, but he sometimes bought groceries for the house. I consider that normal adult living arrangements, but apparently, in his mind, it was investment in my future. Since the will reading, he has been very vocal about how I should share the wealth, and even sent me a long email detailing exactly how much he thinks he's owed. He argued that he contributed not just financially, but emotionally and socially, because he was always a supportive figure in my life. My sister has been very quiet about the whole thing, though I know she talks to him and doesn't correct him much. Here's the thing. I have always maintained that the inheritance is mine. My grandmother made it clear that she wanted me to have it, specifically because she wanted to help me get ahead in life. I didn't ask her to leave me anything, but I am grateful she did. Dan keeps saying that this makes me a bad person for not wanting to share, but I feel like he is overstepping. I would never claim someone else's hard-earned money as mine, and I see my grandmother's estate the same way. She worked her whole life for it, and it was explicitly left to me. Things got worse when Dan started dropping hints to my extended family, saying things like, I guess I didn't earn what I should have, and I helped raise the heiress after all. Some of my cousins even messaged me privately, saying they think I'm being unfair, which felt really hurtful. My parents, who I'm very close to, have been supportive, but they also say that the family drama is only going to escalate if I engage. A week ago, Dan came over unannounced and tried to sit me down to negotiate a sum he thinks is fair. He brought a printed spreadsheet that he claims shows how much he spent on groceries, bills, and emotional labor, and even included a section on opportunity costs for the time he spent supporting me. I laughed when I saw it because it felt absurd, but he was dead serious. He said that not sharing any of the inheritance makes me greedy and ungrateful. I explained politely that while I appreciate everything he did, my grandmother specifically left the money to me, and I don't owe anyone else a portion. He got very angry, accused me of being selfish, and stormed out. Now my sister is upset too. She called me last night crying, saying that I should consider family first, and that Dan feels hurt and betrayed. I told her that the inheritance was never hers or Dan's to begin with, and I don't feel comfortable giving away what I received just because he thinks he's entitled. She argued that families support each other all the time and that I'm making a cold, transactional choice. I countered that supporting each other is one thing, but that doesn't include handing over someone else's inheritance, especially after my grandmother's clear intentions. Some of the points. I've already used a portion of the inheritance to pay off my student loans and start saving for a house. Dan's family is wealthy, and his lifestyle has never been dependent on my family. I have offered to cover small expenses for my sister if she needs help, but not to give Dan a direct share of my inheritance. My extended family seems divided, with some saying Dan has a point and some supporting me entirely. I don't want to create a permanent rift, but I also feel strongly that giving him any money would set a dangerous precedent and basically reward entitlement. I never promised anything to Dan, and I feel like he's trying to retroactively claim credit for things he didn't actually invest in financially or legally. I'm wondering if I'm being unreasonable for refusing. I feel like this is about boundaries and respecting my grandmother's wishes, but everyone else seems to think family obligations should outweigh her explicit intent. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my sister's husband a portion of my inheritance, even though he claims he earned it by supporting me when I was younger. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my house with her kids after she kicked her husband out. I, 32F, have always had a pretty good relationship with my sister, Laura, 29F, but things have been tense lately. For some context, Laura has been married to her husband, Mark, 31M, for about 6 years, and they have 2 kids together, ages 5 and 2. Up until recently, they seemed like a normal couple, albeit a bit dramatic at times. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment that I share with my boyfriend, James, 33M. Space is limited, but I've never minded hosting family for short periods. About 2 weeks ago, Laura called me in tears. She said that she had asked Mark to move out because he had been emotionally distant and constantly criticizing her parenting. I was sympathetic and offered her emotional support, but she soon started asking if she could move in with me temporarily until she figures things out. At first, I thought it might just be a short stay, a night or 2 while she looked for a hotel or stayed with a friend, but then she started hinting that she wanted to bring the kids and stay for an indefinite period. I tried to explain my situation. My apartment is small, and while I love my niece and nephew, there really isn't space for 3 extra people, let alone for weeks at a time. James worked from home, and having constant extra noise and mess would make his job almost impossible. Laura responded by saying she didn't want to impose and that she could make things work. I offered to help her find temporary housing or gave suggestions for short-term rentals nearby, but she insisted that staying with me was the best option because the kids need stability, and you've got more room than Mark does. I started to feel trapped. I didn't want to deny her completely, but I also knew that saying yes would disrupt my life significantly. I offered to watch the kids for a few hours during the day so she could take care of herself, and I even said we could have dinners together, but I drew a hard line on having her move in. Laura seemed genuinely offended. She said I was being selfish and didn't care about her or the kids. She accused me of siding with Mark just because I had a boyfriend and my life was comfortable. Over the next few days, Laura's texts and calls became increasingly desperate and passive-aggressive. She would drop by unannounced to check if I could help her with something, even though I had clearly told her that overnight stays weren't an option. James started feeling anxious and frustrated because he couldn't focus on work, and I was constantly torn between wanting to help my sister and protecting our living space and mental health. Finally, I decided to set a firm boundary. I told Laura that while I loved her and the kids, there was no way we could accommodate a long-term stay. I offered a list of alternatives again, including local short-term rentals, friends who could host them, and some community support resources. Laura completely lost it. She accused me of being heartless, a bad sister, and even said that she might never forgive me. She also started spreading rumors to my extended family that I had turned my back on her during a crisis. My parents got involved after she called them crying and claimed I was mistreating her. My mom tried to mediate, suggesting that I should make room for Laura because family comes first. I told her gently that I had limits and that allowing Laura to move in would create tension, stress, and possibly resentment that could damage our relationship long-term. My mom seemed upset, but didn't push further. I'm still receiving texts from Laura asking me to reconsider, and she's hinted that if I don't, she might just show up anyway with the kids. I've been considering changing my locks because I'm worried about her following through. Meanwhile, James is angry and stressed because he feels like I'm letting family drama interfere with our home life. My friends are split. Some say I should help my sister no matter what, while others say I'm completely justified in protecting my home. I can't help feeling guilty because I love my sister, but I also know that giving in would be a nightmare. I don't want to lose her, but I also don't want my apartment to be overrun or our relationship to sour permanently because I gave in to pressure. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with her kids after kicking her husband out. AITA for refusing to let my sister's new boyfriend stay at my house after a huge fight. I, 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emma, 25F. We grew up in a small town, and after college, I moved back home temporarily while figuring out my career. My parents passed away a few years ago, and since then, Emma and I have been each other's main support system. We live about 2 hours apart now, but I still see her at least once a month, and we talk almost daily. A few months ago, Emma started dating someone new. Let's call him Mark, 27M. At first, I was happy for her. She had been in some toxic relationships before, and Mark seemed polite, funny, and successful. She asked me about him a lot. I invited him over for dinner a few times, and I genuinely tried to get along with him. The issue started when Emma asked me if Mark could stay at my house for a week. She explained that Mark's apartment was undergoing renovations and he had no other place to stay temporarily. She stressed it would be just for a week and he'd be out of my hair after that. I told her I wasn't comfortable with a complete stranger staying at my house for a week. I offered alternatives, like helping him find a short-term Airbnb or even lending him money to stay somewhere else. Emma was clearly upset, but said she understood. A week later, she called me crying and said Mark had nowhere else to go and really needed my help. I still refused, citing personal space, boundaries, and the fact that I live alone and don't want someone I barely know staying for an extended period. She pleaded, called me selfish, and eventually tried to guilt me by saying that family should help each other no matter what. I held my ground. A few days after this, Mark somehow ended up coming to my house uninvited. He texted me, saying he was in town and would just drop by for a few hours. I told him I wasn't comfortable and that he needed to leave. He argued, saying Emma had asked him to come and that I was being unreasonable. He then started loudly talking about how cruel I was being to my own sister in my driveway. I refused to let him in, and eventually, he left after a tense hour of shouting from a porch. The next day, Emma came over and we had a massive fight. She said I had turned into our parents, refusing to help someone in need, and accused me of being cold and unloving. I told her that helping someone doesn't mean forcing myself to be uncomfortable or unsafe, and that she needed to respect my boundaries. She stormed out, calling me selfish and saying she didn't want to talk to me for a while. Since then, our relationship has been strained. I've tried texting her, apologizing if she feels hurt, but also reiterating that I cannot compromise my personal space and safety. She hasn't responded except for a few passive-aggressive messages implying that I am letting Mark manipulate me and that I care more about my comfort than family. A mutual friend recently told me that Emma was telling people I kicked her boyfriend out and that I am supposedly the worst sister ever for refusing to let him stay. Part of me feels guilty because Emma is upset, but another part knows that Mark showed a total lack of respect and that she crossed a boundary by expecting me to let a near stranger stay in my home. I've been thinking maybe I overreacted, but the thought of someone barging into my house uninvited and staying for a week makes me anxious. I have a history of panic attacks when I feel trapped in my own space, and Mark's presence alone triggered intense stress. I feel like Emma doesn't understand that boundaries aren't about being unloving. They're about safety and mental health. I'm honestly torn. On one hand, I don't want to damage my relationship with my sister permanently. On the other hand, I cannot compromise my own mental well-being and safety for someone who clearly disregards my consent. My friends are split. Some say I was right to set boundaries. Others say I could have handled it more diplomatically and let him stay a few days. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house and standing firm even after he pressured me, including showing up uninvited. AITA for confronting my brother about his new parenting approach, even though it caused a huge family argument. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger brother, Mike, 28M. Growing up, we were inseparable, and as adults, we maintained a fairly tight relationship. I married my husband, Daniel, 34M, about 6 years ago, and we had our daughter, Emily, 4 years ago. Life was busy but good. Mike had always been more laid back than me, never one to stress about rules or routines, which sometimes annoyed me when we were kids, but I chalked it up to sibling differences. About a year ago, Mike married his wife, Jenna, 27F. At first, I was excited for them, but as their relationship developed, I started noticing patterns that made me uneasy. They had a child recently, Liam, and the way they were raising him immediately set off alarm bells for me. Mike and Jenna are very laissez-faire in their parenting style. I don't mean letting the kid pick his outfit or eat dessert first. Those are minor things, but they rarely discipline him. They encourage tantrums as a form of emotional expression, and they let him skip important developmental milestones like potty training or structured learning whenever he doesn't feel like it. I know every parent has their approach, but some of their choices felt dangerous or just neglectful. It started small. For instance, I noticed at family gatherings that Liam would run around in unsafe situations. One day, he climbed on top of a coffee table while I was holding Emily, and Mike and Jenna were laughing and filming it instead of stopping him. I tried gently suggesting that maybe Liam should play somewhere safer, and Mike said he needs to learn boundaries on his own. Don't be so uptight. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Over time, things escalated. When Emily and Liam were playing together, Liam would grab toys aggressively and throw them. And when Emily cried, Mike would shrug and say, "He's exploring his emotions. Don't suppress him." I started noticing Liam hitting other kids at birthday parties and public spaces, and Mike's response was always some variation of, "He's a free spirit." Kids need freedom, not constraints. My discomfort kept growing. About 2 months ago, my worry reached a peak. Emily came home from a play date at Mike and Jenna's house crying because Liam had bitten her while she was playing with a toy. I was furious, but tried to talk to Emily calmly. When I brought it up with Mike, he immediately became defensive and said, "She probably provoked him. You're reading too much into it." I argued that biting is serious and needs to be addressed immediately, and he laughed it off, saying, "Kids are kids. I don't want to punish him for expressing himself." I tried to reason with him, explaining that emotional expression doesn't justify hurting others, but he accused me of being controlling and judgmental. Last week, it reached a breaking point. Mike invited Emily and me over for dinner. I noticed Liam had been given a marker and was drawing on the walls. I mentioned casually, "You know, crayons are for paper, right?" And Jenna rolled her eyes. Mike chimed in, "We let him express himself however he wants. Emily should just join in instead of complaining." I couldn't stay quiet this time. I raised my voice, telling them that their approach was irresponsible and that Emily shouldn't be subjected to unsafe or aggressive behavior. I explained that setting boundaries is a form of love and care, not control. The conversation quickly escalated into a full-blown argument. Mike said I was trying to dictate how he raises his kid, and that I was poisoning the family atmosphere with fear and rules. Jenna sided with him, saying I was being judgmental and needed to mind my own business. I told them I didn't want to be a bystander while their child learned harmful behavior patterns, but they both insisted that my concern was unwarranted. The fight ended with me leaving in tears, and Emily was confused and upset. Later that evening, I received a group text from my parents, asking why I stormed out and started criticizing their children's upbringing. They said I needed to let Mike and Jenna handle their family the way they see fit, and that I was overstepping. My husband told me that while I might have a point, I could have approached it more diplomatically. Since then, our family gatherings have been tense. Mike and Jenna haven't spoken directly to me, and my parents are walking on eggshells. Emily keeps asking why we can't see her cousins anymore, and I feel torn between maintaining peace and advocating for the safety and well-being of my daughter and nieces and nephews. I keep replaying the argument in my head. On one hand, I feel like I was standing up for what's safe and reasonable for children. On the other hand, I realize I could have chosen a different way to approach the situation without causing a massive argument. So Reddit, AITA for confronting my brother and his wife about their parenting approach, even though it caused a huge family conflict. Character count, 6,413 if you want. I can write a second version that pushes it even closer to 7,000 characters with even more detailed family dynamics and dialogue, keeping that popular Reddit AITA style. It would feel almost like you're reading a viral post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to go along with my sister's wedding plan, even though it might ruin our family relationship. This is going to be a long one, but I'll try to be as detailed and fair as possible. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and we've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, I was the responsible older sister, and she was the free spirit, which sometimes led to arguments, but also some close bonding. Our parents passed away when we were teenagers, so for the past 10 years, we've had to figure out a lot of things on our own, sometimes leaning on each other heavily, sometimes clashing. Emily got engaged to her fiancé, David, about a year ago. I like David well enough. He's kind and supportive, but I've always had a hard time understanding some of Emily's decisions, especially when it comes to financials and life planning. That's relevant because it's part of why this wedding situation is such a mess. Emily wants a dream wedding. She has this very specific vision. She wants it at a vineyard in Napa Valley, wants a horse-drawn carriage, a string quartet, the whole 9 yards. The issue is that she doesn't have the budget for it. She and David are both working in jobs that pay okay, but not extravagantly, and they also have student loans. Their plan, according to Emily, is to ask our extended family for contributions to fund the wedding. At first, I thought, okay, people do that sometimes, especially if it's close family. I can at least contribute a small amount. But then Emily started sending me increasingly specific messages. First, she asked if I could contribute $1,500. Then she said it would be so helpful if I could cover part of the venue deposit, about $3,000. I told her honestly that I wasn't in a position to give that much. I have my own student loans and rent, and I'm saving for a down payment on a house. After I declined, Emily got a little annoyed but didn't push too hard, at least initially. Then she started sending me long messages comparing our financial situations. I know you make more than me, so it wouldn't be that hard. You've been doing so well with your career. Why can't you help your little sister? Mom and Dad would want you to help make my wedding special. This started to make me uncomfortable. I reminded her that the reason I wasn't giving that kind of money wasn't because I didn't love her, but because I simply couldn't afford it. She didn't respond at first, but a week later, she sent a group text to our cousins asking them to help make Emily's dream wedding happen, and she included me in it. I felt blindsided and humiliated because it made it look like I was refusing out of meanness, not financial reality. Here's where it escalated. Emily's wedding planner, she insisted on hiring one from California, even though she lives in another state, started contacting me, assuming I would contribute financially because Emily listed me as a potential financial support for the wedding. I told the planner that this was a misunderstanding and I would not be funding anything. I also told Emily directly that I felt manipulated and disrespected. Emily accused me of being selfish and unsupportive and started bringing up old grievances from her childhood. Things like, you never included me in your college choices, and you always acted like mom's favorite came up in these conversations. The situation hit a breaking point at a family gathering last month. Emily's fiancé, David, tried to mediate and said I shouldn't feel pressured, but Emily refused to hear it. She confronted me in front of other family members and basically said that if I didn't help financially, I wasn't truly her sister and shouldn't even be involved in the wedding planning. She then told everyone that I had refused to contribute and made it sound like I was deliberately trying to ruin her day. I was hurt and angry. I explained calmly what I had already told her, that I was financially constrained and that I loved her and wanted to support her in non-monetary ways, like helping pick decorations, assisting with invitations, or helping with logistics on the wedding day. Emily refused. She said none of that was enough. She even implied that my presence at the wedding itself would be optional unless I gave her money. I felt trapped. At this point, I told her that I couldn't be part of her wedding if it meant being treated as a walking bank. She cried, said I was betraying her, and ran out of the room. Since then, the rest of the family has been divided. Some say Emily is overreacting and that I have every right to say no. Others think I should just pay to keep the peace. My friends are mostly on my side, saying that a wedding is important, but not worth sacrificing your own financial security or being guilt-tripped. My sister hasn't spoken to me except through one long, tearful text accusing me of ruining her dream and our relationship forever. I want to be involved in her life and her wedding, but I also refuse to be guilted into paying thousands I don't have. I've offered my help in other ways, but she refuses. I feel like the situation is now beyond repair, and I'm worried about being cut off from my family over this. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give money to my sister's wedding even though she says it will ruin our relationship. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insisted on involving my ex-boyfriend. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Claire, 32F. We grew up close, but as adults, our lives have taken very different paths. I'm career-focused, value my privacy, and tend to avoid drama. Claire, on the other hand, is incredibly social, thrives on attention, and often disregards other people's boundaries when it suits her. About a year ago, I broke up with my long-term boyfriend, Matt, 30M. It wasn't a messy breakup, but it was mutual, and we had shared a lot of our lives together. After the breakup, I made it clear to my family that I needed space from him. I didn't want to be around him socially, and I didn't want my family to try to force interactions. Most of them respected this, except Claire, who sometimes makes everything about her. Recently, Claire got engaged to her fiancé, Tom, 33M. She's been planning a huge wedding and invited all of our friends and family. At first, I was happy for her, genuinely. But the drama started when she told me she wanted me to host her bridal shower and the rehearsal dinner. I agreed, thinking it would be fine as long as my conditions were respected. I didn't want Matt involved, and I wanted the events to be low-key. A week after that conversation, Claire called me, completely excited, to tell me that she had invited Matt to the bridal shower. I was taken aback. I reminded her politely that I explicitly asked for him not to be there. She laughed it off, saying, "It's not a big deal, he's part of the family too, and you too can just be mature about it." I explained that it was emotionally difficult for me, and I couldn't be around him right now. She accused me of being dramatic and immature, and said that if I wanted to host the events, I'd have to deal with it. I spent the next few days trying to reason with her, but she refused to budge. She kept saying that it was her wedding, and everyone had to put aside their feelings for her special day. I understand that weddings are important to the couple, but I felt like my boundaries were being completely ignored. Finally, I told her I could not host a bridal shower or rehearsal dinner under these conditions. She was furious. She accused me of ruining her wedding plans, said I was being selfish, and even threatened to cut me out of the wedding entirely if I didn't cooperate. I tried to compromise by offering to help in other ways, like sending a gift, helping with invitations, or assisting with decorations remotely, but she said that wasn't good enough. The situation escalated further when our parents got involved. They sided with Claire initially, saying I should put aside my feelings for the sake of family. I reminded them that Matt and I are not close anymore, and that my mental health and comfort matter too. My parents tried to mediate, suggesting maybe Matt could stay at a different hotel and only come to the reception, but Claire insisted he be at all the pre-wedding events, which were supposed to be hosted by me. Feeling cornered and emotionally drained, I eventually sent Claire a message explaining that I could not participate in hosting the events if my boundaries weren't respected. I told her that it wasn't about being mean or trying to sabotage her wedding, but that I couldn't put myself in a situation where I would be uncomfortable and potentially upset. Claire responded with a long, angry message, calling me selfish, saying I was trying to make her wedding about me, and that I was jeopardizing family relationships over a grudge. She said she couldn't believe I would treat her like this, and that she had expected more from me as her sister. She ended the message with a "fine, don't help at all, see if I care" tone. Since then, our family dynamics have been tense. Some of our relatives understand my perspective, while others think I'm overreacting. My friends have been supportive, saying that it's reasonable to avoid a situation that would make me uncomfortable, but I can't help feeling guilty. I want to support my sister and be part of her big day, but the thought of being around Matt in a hosting role makes me anxious and upset. The wedding is a month away now, and Claire has started making arrangements without me. She even hinted that I might not be included in some family photos or events because I chose to distance myself. I feel like I've tried to compromise, but it seems like anything I do will be seen as wrong. I'm torn between standing my ground for my own emotional well-being and trying to salvage my relationship with my sister. I don't want to be seen as the villain, but at the same time, I can't force myself to host events where I know I'll feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding events because she insisted on involving my ex-boyfriend despite my clear boundaries. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she forgot to pay rent for months and now expects me to bail her out. I, 32F, live in a small city apartment that I absolutely love. It's modest but cozy, and I live alone. I moved here about 5 years ago for work, and over time have really put effort into making it my space. I'm generally a private person and value my independence, which has always been a bit of a sore point with my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Emily has always had a habit of leaning on others financially. She's brilliant, smart, and talented, but she's notoriously bad with money and has a history of making impulsive choices. Growing up, my parents often bailed her out, which, as a kid, I didn't really notice. As an adult, I've tried to set boundaries and avoid enabling her, but sometimes she still finds a way to test them. 2 years ago, Emily moved to my city after quitting her job in another state. She didn't have a job lined up, and her savings weren't enough to cover rent for long. Initially, I told her she could stay at my place for a week while she got her bearings. I expected her to find something quickly, but things didn't go as planned. Within that week, she asked if she could stay a bit longer until I get a job. I agreed, hoping it would be short-term. A week turned into 2 months. During that time, Emily secured a job, but she insisted she couldn't manage rent right away because she had relocation debt and some credit cards to pay off. I told her I wasn't comfortable having her live there for free indefinitely, but she assured me it would just be a couple of months until she got on her feet. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking I was helping her get back on track. Fast forward 6 months, and Emily had moved in almost permanently. She was still inconsistent with paying rent. Some months, she gave me partial amounts. Other months, she conveniently forgot, until I reminded her. I started keeping track and realized she had been living there for over a year and had contributed less than half of what she owed. At that point, I had had enough. I sat her down and told her she either needed to start paying rent regularly or find another place to live. She got very defensive, saying she had nowhere else to go and that she couldn't save enough while paying for other obligations. I tried to compromise and offered her a payment plan to catch up on back rent while continuing to live there, but she refused, claiming she could handle her finances better if I just let her stay rent-free a little longer. I refused, explaining that it wasn't fair for me to shoulder all the cost of her living while she didn't contribute. This led to a huge argument. She accused me of being selfish and not caring about family, while I reminded her that I had already helped her far beyond what most siblings would. Eventually, she moved out, but only temporarily. She found a sublet that was slightly cheaper, but her lease is ending and she now wants to come back. She called me a few days ago, asking if she could move back in. Her reasoning was that she had hit another rough patch financially, and she claimed she learned her lesson and would pay rent this time. I immediately said no. Her reaction was explosive. She accused me of holding grudges and being cruel. She said, "You always act like I'm a burden, but I'm your sister. Family helps family." I tried to explain that helping once or twice is one thing, but letting her live rent-free indefinitely is not sustainable for me. I also reminded her that she has a job now and could afford to rent her own place. She didn't accept that argument and accused me of being greedy and uncaring. Now, some of our mutual friends are saying I should let her back in because she's family and really needs support right now, while others say I'm right to set boundaries. My parents are siding with Emily, saying I'm being too harsh. Even my roommates from college, whom I sometimes vent to, are split. I genuinely don't want to ruin my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to feel like I'm being exploited. Here's the kicker. Emily hinted that if I don't let her move back in, she might just show up and crash on my couch anyway, because she has no other options. That feels manipulative to me, but now I'm second-guessing whether I'm being too rigid. I've considered offering temporary financial help, like paying part of her first month's rent elsewhere, but I am absolutely unwilling to let her live here rent-free again. I want to support my sister, but I also want to protect my home, finances, and mental health. Am I wrong for refusing to let her move back in after how she treated me financially the first time? The story is long, messy, and full of tension between family loyalty and personal boundaries. I need an honest perspective. Character count, 6,425 if you want. I can write a second version that hits closer to 7,000 characters with even more drama, extended backstory, and dialogue to make it feel like a viral Reddit AITA post. It would be even more immersive and emotionally charged. Do you want me to do that? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to give my stepdaughter a large sum of money that her mother expects me to just hand over. I 38M, have been married to my wife, Lisa, 36F, for about 6 years. She has a daughter from a previous relationship, Emily, who is 17 now. I don't want this to come across as me being stepdad versus child, because I genuinely care about Emily and have tried to build a relationship with her over the years. We get along fairly well most of the time, and I try to be a responsible figure in her life without overstepping. Here's the situation that's causing tension right now. Emily has recently gotten into a few online investment opportunities, some sort of cryptocurrency and stock apps. I'm aware that a lot of teenagers experiment with apps like that, and I've warned her multiple times that it's risky and that she should only use money she can afford to lose. She's been adamant, though, that she has a plan and that she can make serious money before turning 18. About 2 weeks ago, she came to Lisa asking for $5,000 to put into one of these apps. Lisa immediately came to me and said, "It's money for Emily's future. You should just give it to her. It's not like it's a huge amount." I paused and asked her if she had read the terms of these apps, if she understood the risks, and if she'd spoken to a financial advisor. Lisa waved me off and said, "She's 17 and she knows what she's doing. You just don't understand teenagers today." I told Lisa that $5,000 is not a small amount of money, especially for something as unpredictable as teen-led investments. I said I wasn't comfortable giving her that money. I offered alternatives, like matching whatever she could save from her part-time job or helping her open a custodial investment account where I could monitor her spending safely. Lisa got visibly upset and accused me of being controlling and unsupportive. The next day, Emily confronted me in the living room. She said, "You don't trust me, do you? You think I'll just throw the money away? You're so unfair. Mom says you're being ridiculous." I tried to calmly explain why I was hesitant, mentioning that I was worried about her losing a large sum of money, potential scams, and tax implications. She interrupted me and said, "I know what I'm doing. You don't have to give me the money, but I thought maybe you cared about my future." Over the next few days, Lisa and I kept arguing about it. She keeps saying I'm denying Emily a chance to be independent and that I should stop treating her like a child. I understand wanting to encourage independence, but this feels like a massive financial risk that I shouldn't be enabling. I also try to explain that independence includes learning how to manage money responsibly, and that doesn't mean risking thousands on something unproven. Lisa has started giving me the silent treatment and has been making snide comments in front of Emily, like, maybe some people just don't want her to succeed. Emily, on the other hand, has been distant and has stopped sharing her daily life with me. She's been asking her friends for advice on how to convince me to give her the money, and I overheard her say she might find a way to get it without asking me. That made me really uncomfortable, and I told Lisa I was worried she might take matters in her own hands and do something that could get her into real trouble. My parents have been involved too, and they think I'm in the right. They say $5,000 is a lot to hand over to a 17-year-old for a high-risk venture, and that my caution is responsible. Lisa's parents, however, are siding with her. They say I'm too controlling and that I need to trust Emily and support her ambitions. The situation has become tense at home. Lisa keeps bringing up the money in front of Emily. Emily is now passive-aggressive and distant, and I feel like my relationship with both of them is deteriorating. I still care about Emily and want her to be successful and financially literate, but I feel like giving her $5,000 for an untested app would be reckless. I've suggested things like letting her invest a much smaller amount, say $100, and tracking her results, or helping her research safer investment methods with me guiding her. But Lisa refuses. She says that's not supportive enough and implies I'm holding her back. I'm starting to feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to be seen as the villain. I'm trying to be responsible with money and set reasonable boundaries while also encouraging independence and financial literacy. But it feels like Lisa thinks my caution is a personal attack on Emily, and Emily is starting to see me as the obstacle rather than someone who cares. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my stepdaughter $5,000 for risky investments. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. So this is going to be a long one, but I really need an outside perspective because my family has basically decided that I'm the problem, and honestly, I'm questioning myself. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F. Growing up, we were very close, almost inseparable, but in the past few years, things have changed dramatically. Emily got engaged to a guy named Mark about 6 months ago, and from the very beginning, I had a bad feeling about him. It's not that I dislike people casually, but Mark's behavior has been off. I'll explain with examples. When I first met him, he was charming and polite, but I noticed early on that he was controlling. Emily loves cooking, and she had just started a little baking business online. Mark repeatedly made snide comments about her wasting time or suggested that she should focus on a more practical career. He also monitored her social media, asking why she posted certain things or why she interacted with specific people. I brought it up with Emily gently a couple of times, saying things like, "Hey, this feels controlling. Are you okay with it?" She shrugged it off, saying he's just joking. Don't read into it. Fast forward a few months, and Emily invited me and my partner, Jake, 30M, to a small gathering at their place. Mark was drunk for most of the night and spent the entire evening criticizing everyone. He made a comment about my career being too safe and joked that Jake settled with me. I tried laughing it off, but Emily seemed embarrassed. When I brought it up later, she said, "I can handle him. Just don't make a scene." Things escalated when Emily and Mark started wedding planning. I noticed that Mark was taking over every detail, including her dress, the guest list, the flowers, and even the seating arrangement. Emily would send me texts saying things like, "I think Mark will hate this idea," or "He want me to change my dress choice." She seemed stressed, but didn't say anything to him. About 2 months ago, Emily asked me to be her maid of honor. I said yes, hoping I could support her and maybe have a chance to talk her into standing up for herself more. At first, everything seemed okay, but soon Mark started suggesting who should be in the bridal party. One of Emily's closest friends had to be removed because Mark claimed she was too outspoken. I tried talking to Emily about it, saying, "You should have the final say. This is your day." She nodded, but didn't push back. The tipping point came last week. Emily had a small pre-wedding dinner with close family, and Mark was invited. During the dinner, he started criticizing my home decor, my career choices, and even joked about my partner's intelligence. He said, loudly, "It's weird how normal people live. I guess you just settle for mediocrity." Everyone else laughed awkwardly. I tried to brush it off, but then he turned to Emily and said, "You really need to control your family better, or your wedding will be a disaster." I couldn't stay quiet. I told him, "You're being disrespectful, and if this is how you're going to behave around my family, I won't attend the wedding." Emily got angry and started crying, saying I was overreacting and making everything about me. Mark, of course, said I was dramatic and jealous, and that I was trying to ruin their day. I've since told Emily I can't attend unless Mark apologizes and agrees to basic decency. She has refused to confront him and keeps saying that I'm letting my jealousy and judgment ruin our relationship. My parents are furious at me, saying I need to put aside personal feelings for family harmony and that I'm selfish for holding a grudge on the wedding day. My friends are split. Some say I'm right to stand up for myself, while others think I'm overreacting. I don't want to miss my sister's wedding, but I also don't want to be around someone who is toxic and belittling. I've tried reasoning, I've tried compromise, and nothing works. The wedding is in 2 weeks, and tensions are at an all-time high. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior? I feel like I'm protecting my mental health and boundaries, but my family sees it as me being spiteful. AITA for confronting my sister over her wedding rules that excluded me from participating? I, 28F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emma, 25F. Growing up, we were practically inseparable, even though we had our usual sibling squabbles. Over the past few years, we drifted slightly because of life, but we've always maintained a good relationship. I have always been someone who tries to support my family in every way possible, and I have always been the type to go the extra mile for milestones and celebrations. Emma got engaged last year to a guy named Michael. I like Michael. He seems like a genuinely decent person, and I was excited to help her plan and celebrate her wedding. I was especially happy because Emma had always told me she wanted me to be a part of her big day, not just as a guest, but as someone who could participate in the preparations. I was honored when she initially asked me to help her with things like dress shopping, creating her registry, and even helping her write her vows if she needed it. I thought things were going smoothly, but then the wedding planning took a turn. About 6 months ago, Emma suddenly started being very controlling about the wedding. She became extremely specific about who could be involved in certain parts of the planning, who could sit where at the rehearsal dinner, and even down to the types of flowers that were allowed in centerpieces. I tried to brush it off as normal bridezilla behavior and continued helping, but it escalated. The first incident that really got to me happened when she told me that she had decided I couldn't be in the bridal party. She said it wasn't personal. She just wanted only people who have been in long-term relationships and people who fit the aesthetic of the bridesmaids' dresses. I was shocked because I've been her sister my entire life, and we were so close. I asked her why that mattered, and she said she didn't want me to outshine the other bridesmaids because of my height and body type. I was hurt and told her that it felt like she was excluding me for reasons beyond aesthetics, but she brushed it off and said I was overreacting. A few weeks later, she started giving me a list of rules if I wanted to attend wedding-related events. I had to wear only certain colors. I couldn't post any pictures on social media. I wasn't allowed to comment on any of her wedding posts, and I had to RSVP to everything within 24 hours. She also told me I couldn't participate in the bridal shower games because apparently the games were for friends only, not family. At that point, I felt like she was systematically trying to push me out of her wedding entirely. I tried talking to her calmly about it. I said, "Emma, I feel like you're treating me differently than everyone else. I love you and want to be involved, but these rules feel like you don't want me there at all." She got defensive and said I was making it about me and that she didn't want me to ruin her vision. I didn't respond after that because I knew it would turn into a fight. Last month, the final straw happened. The night before the rehearsal dinner, she sent me a text saying I wasn't allowed to attend the rehearsal dinner because it's for the bridal party only, and that it's not a reflection on our relationship. I was furious because I'd spent months helping her plan, had bought a $400 dress for her events, and had rearranged my work schedule and even a vacation to be there. I texted back, asking if she could at least explain why she had excluded me from everything, and she ignored me. I decided I needed to confront her in person. I drove over to her apartment and told her that I wasn't willing to sit by and watch her push me out of her life just because she was obsessed with her wedding being perfect. I reminded her that I have been there for her through everything: school stress, breakups, moving apartments, family emergencies, and that this wedding shouldn't be a reason to erase me from her life. She shouted at me that I was being dramatic and that this wedding is about me, not you. I told her that I understood it was her day, but the way she was treating me was cruel and unnecessary. Michael, her fiancé, overheard parts of the argument. He tried to mediate and suggested that maybe I could compromise and help in smaller ways without being in the bridal party, but Emma refused. The argument ended with Emma saying, "If you don't like my rules, maybe you shouldn't come at all," and I left, feeling completely rejected. Now, the family is divided. Our parents are disappointed in both of us. They think I overreacted and that Emma is being unreasonable. My cousins are taking my side, saying Emma has gone too far. I haven't spoken to Emma since that night, and she has started sending passive-aggressive texts like, "Can't wait to see you at the wedding," and "Don't forget the dress code," even though we haven't resolved anything. I feel hurt, excluded, and frustrated. I honestly just want to be part of my sister's big day, not overshadow her, but I feel like she has actively tried to push me out. Part of me wonders if I handled it poorly by confronting her directly, but I also feel like saying nothing would have been worse. AITA for confronting my sister and refusing to follow what I see as arbitrary rules that exclude me from her wedding. This version comes to 6,500 characters, maintaining the tone and complexity of popular Reddit AITA stories with family tension, moral ambiguity, and interpersonal conflict. If you want, I can create another story of similar length, but with a friendship drama theme, which often also goes viral on Reddit. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in with us, even though she says it's just temporary. So, this is going to be long, but I'll try to explain everything clearly. I, 28F, live in a two-bedroom apartment with my roommate, my best friend Jen, 29F. We've lived together for about 4 years, and it's been great. We split rent, chores, and we actually get along well. I work as a graphic designer, Jen is a nurse, and our schedules are different enough that we never really step on each other's toes. Here's where the issue starts. My younger sister, Emily, 24F, has been dating this guy, Mark, 26M, for about a year. Mark's situation is complicated. He recently moved out of his parents' house because of some serious family issues, and he's currently couch surfing between friends. Emily told me a few weeks ago that he needed a place to stay temporarily, maybe a couple of weeks until he figured something out, and she asked if he could stay at our apartment. I was immediately uncomfortable with the idea. I tried to explain to her gently that while I like Mark fine, having someone move in who I barely know, and for an undefined period, wasn't something I was willing to do. I also mentioned that our apartment is small, 2 bedrooms, and while Jim might be okay with it, I didn't want to put her in an uncomfortable position either. Emily got upset and said I was being unreasonable and not being supportive. She argued that he's basically homeless and I should be more compassionate. I offered some compromises. Maybe he could stay in a cheap Airbnb nearby, or I could help him look for a short-term sublet, or even help him figure out his finances so he could afford a studio. Emily refused all of these ideas, saying I was making excuses and that Mark literally had nowhere else to go. So I stuck to my boundaries. I said flat out that he couldn't move in, and that if she really cared about him, she needed to find another solution. Emily was livid. She started sending me texts every day about how cruel I was, how she couldn't believe I would let her boyfriend sleep on the street, and even implied that I didn't care about her feelings. Things escalated when she showed up at the apartment one weekend unannounced, dragging Mark with her. She basically expected me to change my mind on the spot. Jen and I were home, and it was awkward as hell. I calmly told her again that he couldn't stay, and that if he wanted a place, he needed to figure it out elsewhere. Emily started crying and yelling, and eventually stormed out with Mark, leaving me and Jen stunned. After that, Emily started involving our parents. She called them crying about how I was unreasonable and selfish, and how I was refusing to help family in need. My parents called me, and I tried to explain my reasoning, that I wasn't refusing to help. They were welcome to my support in finding housing solutions, and I was happy to help with job applications or references, but I wasn't willing to compromise my living space for an undefined period. My mom was sympathetic, but said I should think about family first, and my dad was more neutral, saying I should maybe try to work something out. The weird part is that Mark is not a bad guy. He seems nice enough, and he's polite when we meet. But the idea of him living in our apartment indefinitely, or even for a month or two, without contributing financially, while we're already splitting rent and chores, just felt intrusive. It's also my apartment. I pay a substantial part of the rent, and I work long hours from home. I value my space, and I felt like Emily was trying to guilt me into giving it up. A week after the confrontation, Emily posted a story on social media about how some people are too selfish to help family in crisis, and tagged me. It blew up among our mutual friends. Some were supportive of Emily, saying I should just let him crash for a bit, while others sided with me, pointing out that setting boundaries is healthy. Since then, I haven't spoken to Emily much. She keeps sending me passive-aggressive texts like, "Hope you don't regret being so selfish when he ends up on the street," or "Some people only care about their rent checks." I haven't responded. Jen has been very supportive, saying that she understands why I drew the line and that we can't just invite strangers, or even acquaintances, to live with us indefinitely. Here's the kicker. Emily has hinted that if I don't let Mark stay, she'll stop talking to me. She also accused me of choosing rent over family, and said I'm going to regret it. I honestly don't know if I'm overreacting. I feel like I'm being blamed for the fact that Mark doesn't have stable housing, which isn't really my responsibility. At the same time, I do love my sister, and I want to help her in ways that don't compromise my life or my mental health. So Reddit, am I the asshole here? I said no to having Mark move in. I offered other ways to help, and I've maintained my boundaries, but my sister and some friends are painting me as cruel and selfish. I just don't see how letting someone crash in a two-bedroom apartment for an undefined period is reasonable. I want to hear your honest judgment. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in, even temporarily, despite her insistence that it's a family emergency? AITA. So, this is going to be a bit long, and honestly, I've been turning this over in my head for weeks, trying to figure out if I'm the asshole here. I need an outside perspective because my family is dead set against me, and my friend are split down the middle. I, 32M, recently went through a tough breakup. My ex and I were together for about 6 years, and the last year was rough. We were constantly arguing, mostly about finances and long-term plans. Eventually, we decided to split, and while it was amicable at first, the fallout has been messy, mostly due to our shared living situation. We were renting a place together, and since I had slightly more money saved up, I offered to take over the lease. My ex agreed, and I moved in alone after the breakup. Here's where things get complicated. Around the same time, my older sister, Emily, 35F, invited me to her wedding. Emily and I have a typical sibling relationship. Sometimes we're close, sometimes we clash, but I always felt she leaned on me emotionally more than I'd like. I had a decent relationship with her fiancé, Mark, 36M, so I agreed to come, thinking it would be nice to show support. And I even offered to help with small things leading up to the wedding, like picking up decorations or running errands. About a week before the wedding, Emily casually mentioned that she had arranged for a hotel block for out-of-town guests, and I should probably book a room. I didn't really pay much attention because I assumed she had reserved enough rooms. A few days later, she told me that the rooms were almost all gone and I had to book immediately. This felt a little controlling, but I figured fine, no big deal. Here's where the problem starts. I had just moved into my apartment alone and had realized that my budget was tighter than I thought. I was expecting my first solo month's rent and bills to hit, and after that, I would be scraping by. I calculated the hotel, travel, and gift expenses and realized it would set me back a few $100s, way more than I could comfortably afford right now. So, I told Emily I couldn't stay at the hotel and asked if she could let me crash at her place instead. Emily freaked out. She said she didn't have space, that her house was already packed, and that asking for exceptions last minute was inconsiderate. I tried to explain that I wasn't asking for free lodging indefinitely, just for a couple of nights, and that I bring a sleeping bag and food or help with chores, but she refused. I told her I might just stay at a cheap Airbnb nearby, but she snapped at me, saying it was ridiculous that I was making her wedding about my financial problems. The next part is where things escalate. 2 days before the wedding, I decided that I couldn't bear the stress of staying somewhere expensive, commuting, or feeling like I was intruding on her plans. So I made a bold decision. I called my ex and asked if I could crash at my old place for a night or two during the wedding weekend. She was surprised but said yes, since she was out of town for work, and I promised I wouldn't be intrusive or bring any drama. I booked a one-night stay in my old apartment to coincide with the wedding. I thought this solved my problem, but Emily found out. She called me the day before the wedding and completely lost it. She said I was being manipulative and trying to sabotage her wedding because I was staying in the city at the same time as the wedding instead of in the designated hotel. She said it was ridiculous that I couldn't manage my finances and that I was making her guests uncomfortable. She also texted Mark, who agreed with her and said I was overcomplicating things and being difficult. I tried to explain calmly that I was not staying at her house or in the hotel, that I was literally just using my old apartment for a night, and that I would be completely self-contained. She still said I was selfish and that I should just skip the wedding if I couldn't afford the hotel. I ended up going anyway, booking a nearby Airbnb that I could walk to from the venue, spending way less than a hotel, and showing up on time. I helped with small tasks during the wedding and didn't cause any drama. In fact, I got compliments from her friends about how relaxed and helpful I was. After the wedding, Emily stopped talking to me. She called me selfish, said I didn't care about her big day, and accused me of being entirely focused on myself. Mark said I had poor judgment and should have prioritized their plans over my financial comfort. Our parents are neutral, but keep asking why I couldn't just suck it up for my sister. My friends are split. Some say I should have swallowed my pride and stayed at the hotel, Others say I did nothing wrong since I respected boundaries and managed my expenses responsibly. So, Reddit, AITA for choosing not to stay in the wedding hotel and using my old apartment instead. I honestly felt trapped between being responsible for myself and being labeled selfish by my family. I never expected it to blow up like this, and I genuinely try to compromise. I can provide more details about the exact costs, distances, and my communication with Emily if needed. I'm just trying to figure out if I truly was inconsiderate or if this is a classic case of overblown wedding stress. Character count, 6,256 if you want. I can also draft a second version of a story with a different twist, one that is more dramatic and emotionally charged, which tends to get even more Reddit traction. It could hit closer to 6,800 to 6,900 characters for maximum engagement. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to cover my sister's wedding costs, even though she's demanding it and threatening our relationship. So this is going to be long because the situation is complicated, but I'll try to lay everything out clearly. I, 32M, have a younger sister, Lily, 28F, and our parents passed away a few years ago. My sister and I were pretty close growing up, but things have gotten tense recently because of her upcoming wedding. I'm still not sure if I'm the asshole here, so I need an outside perspective. Here's some background. I work a corporate job and make decent money, but I also live in an expensive city and have a mortgage. Lily, on the other hand, has bounced between jobs for a few years and doesn't have much savings. Over the past year, she's been engaged to her fiancé, Matt, 30M. From the beginning, she told me she wanted a dream wedding with everything included, which is fine. People have their own priorities, but she also made it clear she expected me to help cover the costs. I initially thought this meant contributing to one or two things like the rehearsal dinner or helping with decorations, but she never specified a cap, and I guess I should have asked. A few months ago, Lily gave me a breakdown of the expenses. The total for the wedding was around $60,000. Yes, that's a lot. She asked me to cover $15,000 because it wouldn't be fair for Matt's family to pay more than me, since I'm the older sibling and more financially stable. At first, I laughed, thinking she was joking. I said no. She got upset, but seemed to accept it at the time. Then things escalated. She started sending me links to venues, dresses, and catering, with messages like, "This is perfect. I already told them you'd pay." I told her repeatedly that I couldn't cover that much money and that it was unreasonable to expect one sibling to pay a quarter of a six-figure wedding. She started guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "Mom would be so disappointed if you didn't support me," and "I guess you're putting money above family." Keep in mind, we lost both our parents. Using them as leverage hurts a lot. I tried to compromise. I offered $2,000 as a contribution toward something small she could choose herself. I thought this was generous given my other financial obligations. She called me selfish and said I was ruining her wedding. At this point, she started involving our extended family. She told our aunt, uncle, and cousins that I refused to help and framed it like I was intentionally sabotaging her big day. Suddenly, I'm getting texts and calls from relatives asking why I'm being so cruel. I asked Matt about his family's contribution. Turns out, they're covering about $30,000. Lily said she didn't want to depend on them too much and that I should step up as a brother. When I pointed out that Matt's family has more disposable income and that it's not fair to demand one person pay $15,000, she called me selfish again and said I didn't care about her happiness. Things got worse when Lily started planning the bridal party. She asked me to pay for the groomsmen's suits, which was another $1,500, and for the honeymoon, which she estimated would be $5,000. I said no to both. At that point, she stopped speaking to me for a week. When she finally did, she sent me a long text listing all the ways I was letting her down and said, "If you can't help me, maybe I shouldn't have you in the wedding at all." That hurt because I was planning to be fully involved otherwise, helping organize, giving a speech, etc. I try to set boundaries, explaining that I love her and want to be part of her life and wedding, but I cannot finance her entire dream. I also reminded her that she could look into other options, smaller venues, postponing, or asking guests to contribute to honeymoon funds, which is common nowadays. She refuses to listen and acts like my refusal makes me the villain. Recently, she started saying that if I don't pay the $15,000, she won't invite me to the rehearsal dinner or the wedding itself. I feel blindsided because I've been trying to stay involved, but it seems like she's using the wedding as a weapon to get money. I tried explaining that cutting me out of the wedding won't fix the budget, but she responded with, "You clearly don't care about me, so why should I care about you?" I talked to a few friends about this, and most of them say she's overreacting and that expecting one person to pay a quarter of the wedding is insane. Some suggest I set firm boundaries and refuse to give any more money than the $2,000 I already offered. Others worry that cutting her off completely might ruin my relationship with her permanently. I want to be clear. I am willing to be involved in non-financial ways, helping plan, giving a speech, attending events, etc., but I absolutely cannot and will not pay $15,000. I also think it's not unreasonable to expect her to cover most of her wedding herself, especially given that Matt's family is paying so much. So, Reddit, here's where I'm stuck. Am I the asshole for refusing to finance the majority of my sister's wedding? I feel like she's being unfair, but she thinks I'm ruining her life. I don't want to lose her, but I also can't let her guilt me into financial ruin. AITA? AITA for refusing to lie to my sister about our mom's funeral arrangements and causing a massive family fallout? This is going to be a long one, so I'll try to keep the timeline clear. I, 33F, recently lost my mom. She had been ill for a while, but it was still sudden in the sense that her decline happened faster than anyone expected. My younger sister, Lily, 28F, has always been the more dramatic sibling. She's smart, funny, and creative, but she also has a habit of twisting things to get attention or sympathy. Our parents always indulged her, and I think it shaped a lot of her personality. When her mom passed, I was devastated. I flew back to our hometown immediately, leaving my job and life behind temporarily. I knew Lily would be there, but I also knew she would want things to be perfect for the funeral in her own way. I didn't care about perfection. I just wanted to honor my mom respectfully. The main issue began when we started planning the funeral. Our mom had left instructions that were relatively simple. A small ceremony, immediate family, some friends, no fancy decorations, and definitely no theatrical displays. I wanted to follow that. Lily, however, immediately started suggesting things like a live harpist, a customized video montage, and asking people who weren't even close to Mom to speak. I tried to gently remind her that Mom wanted a simple affair, but Lily wouldn't hear it. Then it escalated. Our moms will name me as the executor, so I was responsible for coordinating everything legally and logistically. Lily kept saying I was ignoring her ideas and insisted she be in charge of certain aspects. I told her that I was happy to include some things she thought were meaningful, but we couldn't go beyond what Mom specified, especially when it involved spending extra money. She got upset, claiming I was trying to erase her connection with Mom. A few days before the funeral, Lily dropped the bomb. She told me that she had already promised several distant relatives and even some of Mom's former coworkers that they would get a chance to speak or participate, and she wanted me to lie to them and say that Mom's wishes were different, basically, that the funeral was going to be bigger than it actually was. She said, "Just tell them we're inviting everyone. Don't tell them about the restrictions." She framed it as me being selfish if I didn't. I refused. I couldn't lie about Mom's wishes. I told her firmly that I was legally and morally obligated to follow Mom's instructions and that I wasn't going to mislead anyone. Lily lost it. She started yelling that I was controlling everything and that I was ruining the family's chance to honor Mom properly. She accused me of being cold and heartless. I tried to calm her down and suggested that she could still contribute in ways that aligned with Mom's wishes, but she wasn't having it. The day of the funeral was tense. A few people showed up who weren't on the guest list because Lily had told them about the ceremony anyway. Some of them were distant acquaintances, but most understood that it was a private service once they arrived. Lily spent the entire time loudly lamenting that I had stolen the moment from her, and she made several passive-aggressive comments in front of other family members. My dad, who passed away years ago, isn't around to mediate, and my stepdad stayed out of the conflict, so it was just me and Lily trying to navigate everything. Afterward, the fallout has been intense. Lily refused to speak to me for 2 weeks, calling me manipulative and heartless. She has told several relatives that I forced a private funeral against her wishes and that I cut her out of the family, even though she was invited to participate within the boundaries Mom set. Our extended family is divided. Some support me, others are upset with me because they think I should have let Lily do whatever she wanted to make it special. I feel guilty sometimes because I know Lily is hurting and that losing a parent is traumatic, but I also feel strongly that I was honoring my mom's explicit wishes. I didn't want to create drama, but I also couldn't compromise the truth. My friends say I did the right thing legally and ethically, but part of me wonders if I could have handled it differently, maybe found a compromise that would have made Lily feel included without lying. AITA for refusing to lie to my sister about Mom's funeral arrangements. AITA for refusing to host my brother's wedding at my house, even though he offered to pay for renovations. So, this is going to be long, but I feel like I need to explain everything properly. I, 34M, live in a moderately sized house in a suburban area. It's nothing crazy, but I've put a lot of effort into making it feel like home. I bought about 5 years ago and spent the first couple of years renovating the kitchen and bathrooms myself, which was a huge learning curve, but also kind of my pride project. I live alone and have a fairly quiet life. My brother, Mike, 30M, is my only sibling, and we've had a mostly normal relationship, sometimes close, sometimes distant, depending on life circumstances. Recently, Mike got engaged to his girlfriend, Sarah. They've been together for about 3 years and have been talking seriously about marriage for a while. I was thrilled for him, and I tried to be supportive when they were planning the wedding. Here's where things started to get complicated. A few months ago, Mike came over unannounced and dropped the bomb that he wanted to have the wedding at my house. At first, I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. He said, "I know your place is beautiful, and it has all the space we need. Plus, it's way cheaper than renting a hall. Don't worry, we'll pay for any renovations you need to make it look nice." I was taken aback. My house is a personal space for me, not a venue. I spent a lot of time and money keeping it exactly how I like it, and the idea of hosting a large, stressful event here felt overwhelming. I told them I appreciated the offer, but I wasn't comfortable with the idea. Mike didn't take it well. He said I was being selfish and family shouldn't be turned away from helping each other, and that it would be a great way for us to bond. I try to explain that it's not about money or being unhelpful. It's about comfort in my home being my sanctuary, but he just kept insisting. He then started bringing up the renovations in more detail. He offered to redo my backyard, paint the walls, and even refinish the floors if it meant I'd agree. He said it would be worth it because it would raise my home's value and that I'd thank him later. I get that financially it might make sense, but it still felt like he was trying to buy my consent. I told him again that I wasn't comfortable with it. The tension between us escalated over the next couple of weeks. Every time we spoke about the wedding, it came back to my house. Sarah chimed in a few times, saying she really liked my style and thought it would be a dream venue. I started to feel cornered. I offered to help in other ways, like helping choose vendors, making playlists, or even letting them borrow a few pieces of furniture for decoration, but hosting the wedding was a hard no. Things blew up last week. Mike called me in anger and said that my refusal was ruining the family dynamic and that I was being petty and controlling. He said that he had already told a lot of friends that the wedding would be at my house, and now he had to start over. I reminded him that he shouldn't have assumed my consent in the first place. My parents got involved at this point. They called me and said I was being difficult and that I should consider the fact that Mike was offering to pay for upgrades and that it could be an opportunity to show generosity. I tried to explain that generosity isn't about giving up control of your personal space or letting someone use your home in a way that makes you uncomfortable, but they didn't seem to understand my perspective. I'm worried I've gone too far, though. A couple of our mutual friends have subtly messaged me saying that I'm being unreasonable and that I should just let them have their day. But honestly, it's my house, and I can't shake the feeling that hosting a wedding there would create a lot of stress, possible damage, and resentment. I've always kept my home very tidy and structured, and the idea of a large event with dozens of people is not something I want to deal with. To make matters worse, I recently heard from one of the vendors I contacted that they had asked about the venue and were told my house, which means the information has already started circulating. I feel like I'm stuck between being firm with my boundaries and being painted as the villain by my family and friends. I suggested a compromise, helping them find a local hall that's more suited to a wedding, offering financial assistance for decorations, or even helping with setup and logistics on the day. I thought that was reasonable, but Mike refused. He said no other place felt right, and that he couldn't imagine the wedding anywhere else. So here I am, feeling guilty, stressed, and isolated. I don't want to hurt my brother's feelings, but I also don't want to lose my home as my sanctuary. Am I really the a-hole for refusing to host the wedding, even with the renovations and money he offered? I feel like saying yes would only cause long-term resentment, but everyone around me seems to think I should compromise. I can handle helping in other ways, but hosting the wedding itself feels like a hard boundary I'm not willing to cross. I don't know if I'm overreacting, or if this is a situation where my brother and I just have fundamentally different ideas of family and boundaries. I just want to know, AITA for saying no? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.